Members of the public are advised the meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the live stream and video recording will be made publicly available on YouTube and Council's website. So thank you for attending Council's meeting today. I'll also make mention the issue of COVID vaccination status is another unexpected fact of our daily lives among the many adjustments we've had to make over the past 2 years as we learn to live with the pandemic. Tonight I would like to confirm for the record that all Nellenberg Shire councillors and council officers are fully vaccinated. I'll now move to the acknowledgement of country. Nellenberg Shire Council respectfully acknowledges the Wurundjeri people as the traditional owners of the country on which Nellenberg is located, and we value the significance of the Wurundjeri people's history as essential to the unique character of the Shire. We pay tribute to all First Nations people living in Nellenberg, give respect to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all First Nations people. We respect the enduring strength of the Wurundjeri Wurrung and acknowledge the ongoing impacts of past traumas and injustices from European invasion, massacres and genocide committed against First Nations people. We acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. Wurundjeri Wurrung people hold a deep and ongoing connection to this place. We value the distinctive place of our First Nations people in both Nellenberg and Australians' identity, from their cultural heritage and care of the land and waterways to their ongoing contributions in many fields including academia, agriculture, art, economics, law, sports and politics. I'd also like to acknowledge those people in the gallery today, so thank you for attending in person, and also acknowledge those who are watching live stream. I'm now going to ask Councillor Egan to read the Good Governance Pledge.
Thank you. As councillors, we are mindful of our civic responsibilities and obligations. We pledge to take them seriously and to carry them out with diligence and integrity. We know the decisions we take will affect the people and environment of Nellenberg, now and in the future. We undertake, therefore, to make sound and principled decisions of lasting value in a spirit of fairness and for the good of all. We also pledge to serve the needs and well-being of the community and the environment in an open and honest manner and to the best of our abilities.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. We now move on to item 4, which is the prayer, and I'll just introduce Pastor Philip Wyatt, who's going to be speaking to us tonight. He's the Senior Pastor of Manningham Christian Centre. Tonight's prayer will be led by Matthew Wyatt from Manningham Christian Church, and he's been in that role for 16 years. A lecturer in ministry training and Vice Chairman of the denomination to which Manningham Christian Centre, or MCC, belongs. Manningham Christian Centre celebrates his 41st birthday next year. It launched an emergency food relief project called CareNet, which started as a cupboard stocked with non-perishable food in the MCC offices. Now, as a founding partner in the Food Collective, CareNet in the last 6 months has served over 2,000 food hampers, with over half of those being distributed to those in need through the Food Collective. In addition to this, just over 150 people from Nellenberg have visited CareNet in Templestowe to access much needed food relief. Their goal is to be community champions. They are working together with those around them to help shape a better, safer and more vibrant community. As a church of about 100 people who live all over Melbourne, they aim to serve where they can, with whom they can, and help those who need it. With a strong online presence, they are a diverse community that aims to strengthen lives and encourage people. They view it as a privilege to collaborate with many community groups, schools and councils to respond to community need, especially over the last 2 years. They look forward to continuing this work to strengthen lives and opportunities for growth. I'd now like to invite Pastor Wyatt to deliver tonight's prayer.
Thank you, everyone. I count it such a great privilege to gather together and share this time with each and every single person. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we honour and thank you for this opportunity to come together and pray. We ask that you guide and grow our communities. As we look toward new opportunities for 2022, help us hear your voice and listen to your guidance. I pray that you would guide decisions and give us wisdom as businesses and communities navigate this great change. We invite you into every space and every area of our lives, that through your Spirit, others' lives would be healed and made whole. That as we recognise diversity in thought and creativity, and in doing so, find solutions that are inspired by you. Heavenly Father, we commit this last meeting for 2021 into your hands. Let it bring glory to you in and through your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. I'll now move on to item 5, apologies. Councillor Duffy will be in attendance later in the meeting by mobile phone in accordance with omnibus legislation. I will advise councillors and members of the public once she arrives. As we do not have any apologies, we'll move on. Moving to item 6. I have a condolence for Lorna Smith. I was saddened to hear of the recent passing of local community identity Lorna Smith, a Hurstbridge Fire Brigade member and former staff member of the Shires of Eltham and Nellenberg. She embodied the sense of community and commitment to giving, so characteristic of many in our shire. Lorna moved to Eltham in 1956 after migrating from the United Kingdom with her family as a young child. She moved to Hurstbridge in 1968 and from there ensued a life of tireless and admirable service to the local community. Lorna's involvement with the Hurstbridge Brigade dates back to the early 1970s following bushfires which burnt out much of Diamond Creek, Eltham and Panton Hill. Her work with the brigade involved providing support to her husband Philip and the competition team and assisting with brigade fundraising events. Always a pillar of strength behind the scenes, she maintained this faithful support of her family's commitment to the brigade and our community. Lorna had an abiding interest in and a commitment to the promotion of long life learning. In 1977, she was employed by the then Shire of Eltham at the newly established North Riding Living and Learning Centre in Panton Hill, becoming centre coordinator in the early 1980s. This commitment to serving the local community obviously runs deep, with her son Simon now also an officer in Nellenberg Shire Council. Her involvement in adult education crossed local and regional boundaries, as she was also appointed to the Northern Metropolitan Adult and Further Education Board. She also pursued a successful career in hospitality, owning and running the Wildwood restaurant in Hurstbridge for a number of years. Lorna became a strong advocate for greater support for carers of the aged, those with disability or chronic illness. This was, of course, close to home through her experience as the primary carer for her mother for the last 5 years of her life. As in everything else, she pursued this cause with energy, commitment and compassion. Lorna will be greatly missed. On behalf of Nellenberg Shire Council, I would like to convey our deepest condolences to Philip, Tim and Simon, their families and friends. I'll now move on to item 7, confirmation of minutes. Call for,
Happy to move that.
thank you,
Yeah.
Councillor Payne.
Yes, I'd like to move the motion that Council confirms the minutes of the extraordinary Council meeting held on Wednesday 24th of November 2021, Attachment 1, and Council meeting held on Tuesday the 30th of November 2021, which is Attachment 2.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Do I have a seconder for the motion?
Yes, Mayor, I'll second the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Stockman. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? No? I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. I'll now move to item 8, which is disclosure of conflicts of interest. And I understand, Councillor Stockman?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. So myself, Councillor Richard Stockman, declaring a conflict of interest through the officer's report that is item 12 on the council meeting agenda CM 172/21 on this date, the 14th of December, and it's the future use of the old Plenty Fire Station site.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. Is there any other conflicts of interest? No? Thank you. Also note, Councillor Stockman, that you should disclose this immediately before the item when it comes up. Thank you. Item 9, petitions. We do not have any. We'll now move on to questions from the gallery. Council's meeting procedure governance rule states that questions are limited to a maximum of 2 questions per individual. Furthermore, a question will only be read to the meeting if the chairperson and/or chief executive officer has determined that the question is a question and not a statement or an opinion. Council has received 7 questions in total tonight from 4 people. 4 of the questions are from Gilla Schnapp and Esther Caspi, which also includes an additional statement, and the other 2 questions and a statement are from members of Grandmothers for Refugees. So in accordance with our governance rule meeting procedure, I will not be reading statements made, and I will proceed to only read the actual questions submitted. This question is from Gilla Snap. How will Council rectify a flawed, inequitable 2020 MAC structure plan that unconsciously promotes the new eastern side of the eastern side at the expense of exclusion and the detriment of the original town centre, excluding the DC Primary School and businesses on Collins Street and Main Street from its boundary? So the response is, Council undertook an open and transparent process in developing its now adopted 2020 Diamond Creek Structure Plan. This process included significant community consultation. The adopted 2020 Diamond Creek Structure Plan is largely an update on the existing policy settings. Question 2. How will Council prevent the unfair and unreasonable redirection and erosion of established paid for urban reticulated infrastructure in the Ironbark Road and its adjoining Pioneer Road catchment and other to accommodate housing and other growth as proposed by the new DC MAC structure plan? So the response to that is, the purpose of a major activity centre, or MAC, is to provide an attractive and appropriate regional hub to provide for growth where housing is concentrated in close walking distance to jobs, services, retail, community facilities and public transport. The purpose of the structure plan is to give effect to the adopted structure. The adopted Diamond Creek Structure Plan does not seek to redirect or erode any infrastructure. Ironbark Road is not within the structure plan boundaries. Esther Caspi has asked the following questions. Question 1. Please explain what is meant by Diamond Creek Corridor, page 11 CM agenda. A term we have not heard before and one that was not openly and transparently included in this process or any other. Response. The term Diamond Creek Corridor is a reference to the Diamond Creek, the actual creek, not the activity centre, and the riparian banks area either side of the creek itself. Question 2. If the intention of the new 2020 DC MAC structure plan was to reduce pressure to extend the urban growth boundary, UGB, by strategically consolidating within the boundary, why was this not publicly articulated in the documentation for the plan put out to public consultation? And the response is, the 2020 Diamond Creek Major Activity Centre Structure Plan seeks to respond to state planning policy. This is spelt out at page 10. In your question you reference clause 11.011S and clause 11.031S, which are contained in the state planning policies. Council, through the 2020 Diamond Creek Major Activity Centre Structure Plan, is implementing these state planning policies. I will now proceed to read both questions received on behalf of Grandmothers for Refugees, Jugga Jugga Branch, and provide a combined response to the following questions. So Janine Lawrence, on behalf of Grandmothers for Refugees for Jugga Jugga Branch, asked the following questions. Will the Nellenberg Council set up an ongoing support scheme as distinct from one-off grants, which could involve A, an inclusive employment program similar to that operating in Banyule, whereby refugees and other local residents facing barriers to employment can be offered job opportunities that will help them experience a supportive work environment, learn skills in areas appropriate to their experience and capabilities, and develop confidence and knowledge about how an Australian workplace operates. And B, offer financial assistance to help refugees prepare themselves for a satisfying and independent future. This could include helping with fees and other costs involved in undertaking a course of studies or assisting with costs of rental accommodation. And Meg Strange, on behalf of Grandmothers for Refugees, Jugga Jugga Branch, is asking this question. Would the Nellenberg Council pass the motion put before them tonight by Councillor Duffy and follow up by A, helping local community groups such as Amnesty International, Grandmothers for Refugees, Welcome to Eltham and Montmorency Asylum Seekers support groups in sponsoring refugees to settle into our community under an improved and expanded community sponsorship program. And B, writing to relevant federal government and opposition MPs, exhorting them to improve the program to make it fairer and more accessible for community groups to undertake as outlined in Councillor Duffy's motion. So the response to both of those questions is, as we have a notice of motion listed on this matter to be heard on the agenda tonight, Council cannot preempt its decision before the matter is heard. So thank you for sending those in. I'll now move to item 10, which is reports of advisory committees. Do I have a mover for that?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to move that.
Thanks, Councillor Payne.
And I'd like to move that the minutes of the advisory committee meetings reported be noted in attachment 1.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Perkins, you second the motion? Thank you. Would you like to speak? Councillor Perkins, would you like to speak? Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you, councillors. Well, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously.
Mayor, can I move a procedural motion?
Yes, you can.
Just moving a motion to vary the order of the agenda tonight. There's a contentious officer report, which is number 160, proposed amendments C143 and 144 to the Nellenberg Planning Scheme, implementation of the Eltham and Diamond Creek Major Activity Centre Structure Plans 2020, and my motion is to move that officer report, so CM 160-21, further down the agenda to be after CM 181-21. So to have that officer report dealing with C143 and C144 to occur after the informal meetings of Councillor Records, 14th of December. Is that, do we need to be able to, yeah. So I'm just moving that motion to vary the agenda to that extent.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan.
Just quickly, the intent is to I understand that Councillor Natalie Duffy will be here later in the meeting, and it's really moving the order of the agenda to such a time when Natalie might be here. She's certainly not here now.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion?
Do you mean for or against?
The request to put forward the motion to say whether you support changing the order, moving it down to speak. Would you like to speak on that?
I'd like to speak against it, but through the chair, I don't know. Can I do that at this stage?
Through the chair, Councillor Payne can speak for or against the motion to move the order of the agenda.
I just basically think that I understand that there was a push to get a particular outcome for this. I don't think it is a contentious motion, and I would hope that we would stick to the agenda as per the papers. I understand that Councillor Duffy won't be here till later in the meeting, but that is her choice, and she understood that when she was briefed about tonight's agenda. So I think there are other things at play, and seeking to re-prosecute basically strategies from the past council, which I think is a pointless activity. So I just think we should stick with what we've got.
Councillor Egan, you'd wish to speak?
Yes, I'd like to speak against the motion as well, basically for the reasons that Councillor Payne has just outlined. This is simply manipulation by a particular council law to get a particular outcome that he wants, so that because he thinks Councillor Duffy will vote for him. And as Councillor Payne has already said, she's seen the order of the agenda. She hasn't come to me, she hasn't come to the Mayor as far as I'm aware, showing any concerns, so I don't think it should be an issue. She picked the time when she was going to join the meeting, so that's how it should stay as far as I'm concerned.
Would anyone else like to speak? No, there's no right of reply for that. So I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of changing the order? All those against? I will exercise my casting vote, and I will go with changing the order. So I'll add my second vote for that. All right, so the order has been changed. We'll now move on to the next item, which is the Kangaroo Ground War Memorial Park Management Plan. Someone to move the motion. Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan.
Yes, I'd like to move that Council 1 adopts the Kangaroo Ground War Memorial Park Draft Management Plan in Attachment 1 as the management plan for the Kangaroo Ground War Memorial Park, subject to the following changes being made to the draft management plan. A. Including in the reference made in the draft management plan to the investigation into an alternative park road access that is outside the scope of the draft management plan, that the existing moral grasslands will not, in principle, be adversely impacted. B. Noting in the management plan that consideration be given in the design of the memorial gardens to include some amount of rosemary planting to complement the existing lone pine and its significance to the Anzacs as compensation for the removal of the existing rosemary planting as part of the stone edge reinstatement around the tower base works in the draft management plan. C. Noting in the management plan that consideration be given to the recycling of the existing cypress trees in the park that are to be replaced or removed in the draft management plan, including the potential use of the tree timber in and or associated with park works outlined in the draft management plan. D. Noting in the management plan that consideration be given to the potential use of the salvaged timber from the original tower stair in and or associated with park works outlined in the draft management plan. E. Inclusion of capital expenditure external improvement works in the management plan to improve the appearance of the caretaker's residence house and to better visually integrate it with the park, i.e. removal of the existing park yard vegetation of no to moderate retention value, blocking views and replacement with new planting, and provision of more presentable replacement yard fencing addressing the park, including budget allocation for the work provisionally estimated to be in the order of $65,000, give or take 20%, amount to be confirmed in the cost plan of the management plan. F. Explanation in the management plan of the level of the priority sites maintenance standard for the park that is identified to be increased in the draft management plan. G. Amendment of any apparent technical anomalies in the draft management plan, including descriptions and budget calculations for detailed scope of work items. H, dating of the management plan as adopted on the 14th of December 2021. And 2, notes that the above changes to the draft management plan and its finalisation as the adopted management plan are planned to be undertaken by the end of January 2022 to inform Council's capital works budget allocations for the 22-23 financial year. 3, instructs officers to notify all submitters to the exhibition of the draft management plan and park stakeholders, advising of Council's resolution and expressing Council's gratitude for their contribution. 4, subject to point 1, instructs officers to publish the adopted management plan on Council's Participate Nellenberg website and notify all submitters to the exhibition of the draft management plan and park stakeholders of the availability of the adopted management plan. Is there more? Or is that it?
I think that's it.
That's it.
Well done.
It's a long one.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. Thank you. Councillor Ramsham, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, look, it's been a lot of work and we've come a long way with this one, but I'm really pleased with where it's ended up. I'd like to thank Rosa's team who have worked so hard on it for such a long time. There have been a few iterations. The first one, which came along in, I think, late 2019, was it late 2020, sorry. It was very big and contained a lot of stuff that really set people off. And we went back to the drawing board and this is what we came up with. And Rosa's team have done a huge amount of work to bring it all this way. And I'm really pleased to see that the community has been listened to in the most recent round of submissions. And the reason that motion was so long is because all of those points A to H that I read out came from community submissions and came from our stakeholders group, all of whom had some strong opinions on how the park should be managed. And that comes down to our communities team who have done such a fantastic job of bringing together that stakeholders group and bringing different views into a room, a whole number of groups who wish to use the tower in a whole number, the park in a whole number of different ways, and to have them all in the same virtual Zoom room, all talking and having a really positive discussion with some really positive outcomes. It's not an easy thing to achieve, so well done to the communities team for being involved in that. Just to talk to a couple of points that are addressed here. In terms of the caretaker's residence, and this is separate to the caretaker's cottage, we have the stone caretaker's cottage, which is to be done up and repaired to bring it into a state where it really can display its heritage value. There was a lot of debate about whether to remove the caretaker's residence, and the decision that council has made is not to remove the residence. There was quite a bit of input from the community that we could get rid of it and expand the park, which would be a fantastic outcome. But after some budgeting work from officers, we found that would be an incredibly expensive proposal, and not just a one-off expense either, but a recurring expense year on year to pay for the work that's currently done by the caretaker. So that's why the decision was made to not remove the caretaker's residence and instead to make a one-off expense to better integrate it with the park, which will have a much better outcome from a budget perspective, and it will also have a positive outcome for the park in making sure that that it's integrated properly. Unfortunately, we just can't afford to remove it and have such a large expense year on year going forwards after that. I think pretty much the rest of the changes all speak for themselves. The removal of the cypress trees will, I'm sure, be a controversial one, and there will be community consultation about how we do that and what we replace them with. But I think the overwhelming consensus I hear from most of the park stakeholders is that those cypress trees never should have been planted the way they are around the park. They obstruct the view from the tower, and it would be much better to have a tree that's indigenous to the area. So hilltop manor gums have been thrown around by a number of stakeholders. So that will certainly be one of the options, I think, when we replace the cypress trees, to have hilltop manor gums, which are indigenous to the area and would have a manageable height, which means that we can actually have native trees surrounding the park, and they wouldn't grow too tall to block the view from the tower. So that will have a good outcome, the removal of those trees. They are dying. They do need to go. As sad as it is, I think a lot of the community really like those trees, but they do need to be replaced, and we'll replace them with something native. And the wood from the trees will be reused and put back into the park, and I'm really pleased that that's going to be reflected in the management plan. So yeah, very, very happy to be moving this today. It's a fantastic start to a long project that's going to really bring that park into the condition that it deserves to be in, because it really is one of the treasures we have here in Nellenberg. And I'm very proud to have it in my ward, and very proud to be passing this plan to ensure its ongoing management. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan. Would Councillor Egan, would you like to speak? Would any other councillors like to speak? No? I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. I'll now move on to the next item, which is the adoption of Nellenberg Youth Strategy 2022 to 26. I believe Councillor Ramcharan would like to move the motion.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move that Council 1 adopts the Nellenberg Youth Strategy 2022 to 2026 in Attachment 1. 2, authorises the Executive Manager, Community Services to make any further minor changes to the Nellenberg Youth Strategy that may be necessary and are inconsequential in nature. 3, makes the adopted Nellenberg Youth Strategy 2022 to 2026 publicly available on Council's website. And 4, thanks submitters and advises them of the outcome of the consultation process.
Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan. I have a seconder.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Ramcharan, would you like to speak?
Yes, I would. My voice is going to get sore after this. I've been doing a lot of speaking. But I am very pleased to be speaking to this item. Having been the councillor appointed to the Youth Council over the last year, I've really had a chance to get to know a great group of young people. It's been such a shame that we've had COVID and all been on Zoom, and I haven't really had a chance to have that one-on-one time with them and really get to speak to each of them individually. But they are a great group. I'm no longer the councillor appointed to the Youth Council. Councillor Duffy is now the appointed councillor, and I'm sure she will. It's an issue that she's very passionate about, and a committee that I'm sure she will bring a lot of passion to. I think it would be right for her to move this motion, except she's not here at this point. So, having been on the Youth Council while the youth strategy was being developed, I think it's right that I move it. One thing I really noticed when I walked into the first Youth Council meeting was just how incredible it is to have so many different ideas and perspectives in that room. People who are interested in skate parks and BMX, public transport, inspiring leadership amongst young people, wildlife, the environment, climate change, social inclusion, just having more events for young people, caring for people of all ages, mental health, the list goes on. They just have such a broad range of perspectives, and all of those perspectives have been reflected here in this plan. The plan covers 5 different priority areas: healthy and well, empowered and engaged, access to safe spaces and places, equipped and employed, and welcome and connected, which are very high level sort of headings, but I really encourage everyone who's watching to have a read of the plan and see what it says, because it really does reflect what our Youth Council have said, and also what we got from the youth consultation, which was a roaring success. We had a huge number of responses. The Youth Council smashed their goals. I can't remember exactly what the goal was. I think it was 1,000 or 2,000, but whatever it was, they smashed it, and they were promised laser tag. And we were meant to have laser tag a couple of weeks ago, but they weren't able to make it. So we'll be doing that next year. Councillors versus youth councillors. And I certainly know which team I would like to be on, but I think I will probably be on the losing team when we go to laser tag.
Whose team?
We'll wait and find out, Mayor. But one thing I can say for certain is it will be great fun. So yeah, thank you to the communities team again for such amazing work bringing young people into this space and actually really properly consulting with them. It's been a really, really positive thing to see. What I've heard from the youth councillors now is they've put a huge amount of work into setting this strategy, and what they really want to see is the execution. So Councillor Duffy and the youth team will work with the youth council over the next year, and my hope is that they'll be able to really look into the execution of the plan, and each of them hopefully will have some actions that they want to see falling out of the plan. And hopefully they can actually see those actions happening and get some action on the ground, because that's what they joined for, and I'm sure that's what they'll want to see. So yeah, happy to be supporting the motion, and really looking forward to what the Youth Council comes up with next. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan and Councillor Payne.
Just wanted to add, I fully support Councillor Ramcharan's comments about the youth strategy, and I look forward to trying to find a youth hub that will be run for and by our local youth. We are actively looking for that, and hopefully in the term of this council we can establish a youth hub as well.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, just very quickly, I was just doing some sums on the map on page 9, just the distribution of young people in Nellenberg and where they actually are, and I just can't help but think in the context of our new BMX facility. If we look at Diamond Creek, Eltham North and Eltham, a total of 56% of our young people live in those three areas side by side. So Diamond Creek, Eltham North, Eltham, 56% of the young people in Nellenberg. So I think if we can put a youth facility in the middle of all that, that covers half of the Shire in terms of young people. It's just, yeah, that was just the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Any other councillors? No. Just before we move on, I just want to say that I'm really excited about this youth strategy coming to be adopted today, and that it doesn't stop there. So we start, I'm hoping straight away, but I think we've got a Christmas break, but putting actions into place. And I really want to say a really big thank you to the Youth Council and all officers for working so hard on implementing this draft strategy, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing the actions being put in place. So I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. We'll now move on to the future use of the Old Plenty Fire Station site.
Mayor, as noted before, I'll be vacating, and that's a general conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. We'll call you when the motion's finished, Councillor Stockman. Thank you. Councillor Perkins, you'd like to?
Yeah, thanks. I'll move the motion as per the papers, and that is that Council 1 authorises the Manager of Property and Facilities Maintenance to request the Country Fire Authority to demolish the Old Plenty Fire Station located at 109 to 115 Yanyan Road, Plenty, remove all other improvements and revegetate the land. Number 2, request council officers to complete further community engagement on developing the site for public open space and report back to council with concept options and cost estimates within the next 12 months. And number 3, thanks submitters and advises them of the outcome of the consultation process on the future use of the Old Plenty Fire Station site.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
I'm happy to second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Perkins, you wish to speak?
Yeah, just, you know, I've been involved in a bit of the history of this site, particularly the very, very long search that CFA undertook to relocate the Plenty Fire Station. They looked at numerous options. The land parcel they settled on was council owned land, which was parkland, just behind, further up Memorial Road. It's fair to say the community didn't do backflips over that one. They were quite upset at the prospect of losing parkland and council selling land to the CFA for that purpose of the fire station. Most people seem to want CFA to rebuild on the current site, but you know, it was an operational requirement for the Plenty Fire Brigade that they needed a bigger site, and you know, the one they'd chosen best suited their operational purposes, and they came to council looking for support, not only in agreeing to set up a memorandum of understanding that we would potentially sell them the land, because that was dependent on the planning outcome, but ultimately we provided planning approval as well for that new site. That was challenged at VCAT, and the council decision to award the permit was upheld. So it sort of came of no surprise after all that was said and done, and the new fire station is largely complete now after the loss of a significant number of trees and major cut into the land, that the local community wanted a park for a park. So they wanted that land where the old fire station was to be returned back to them as parkland. I suppose it's fair to say before the consultation process started, I didn't really support that view, because I thought it would be a shame to lose what would otherwise be considered as a perfectly usable building. Particularly in the Nellenberg context, I've seen some buildings like the Diamond Creek Men's Shed and others, other buildings that are in far worse condition than that, put to good purpose. And I'd always held out hope there might be a Plenty Men's Shed, that there might be some interest to start up a new Plenty Men's Shed and to go into the old Plenty Fire Station. The consultation process didn't bear that out. What the consultation process did tell us was that the local community, the people most impacted by council's decision on the future of the site, they overwhelmingly wanted that old Plenty Fire Station to be demolished and it returned back to public open space, a park. Lots of submitters, lots of people made very, very good points. I think the one that struck me the most was the submitter who explained to us all the uses that occur at the adjacent Plenty Memorial Park, that supports hockey and cricket and football and other sports, I'm sure, but overwhelmingly those uses weren't being used largely by the local community. So the local community put the case that they didn't have much in the way of open parkland. So look, it's an opportunity for council to get CFA to demolish the building. That was the arrangement in the contract when council first leased the land to CFA many, many years ago. The contract or the deed stated that when the CFA were eventually finished with the land, that it could be demolished at CFA's cost. That's the one that makes a big difference now. I'm not sure what that is worth to council. It might be 50, but it'd be certainly tens of thousands of dollars. If that offer wasn't on the table, council might further consider keeping the building. But the fact that the CFA will pay for the building to be demolished and the rubble taken away at their cost, that helps me come to this decision to support the officer recommendation. And I think the whole officer recommendation is based on the community consultation that we've heard, and much like the recent decision on the hospital in Blue Lake Ward, this is another one where initially you might have one view, but community can convince you that perhaps you didn't have it quite right, and this one's a case in point. So it's a shame to lose a building in some ways, but that's certainly what the local community wants. I'm convinced of that, and it's reasonable that it be returned to public open space. There will of course be more investment into the site in terms of probably a local park, barbecue, shelter, and look forward to the consultation around the future of the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Councillor Payne, would you like to speak?
Just to add that this was a close decision, but more residents wanted the property returned to parkland than not, and that's the basis on which council would make its decision, I would hope.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Would Karen? No. Sorry, Councillor Egan. And Councillor Ramsham, would you like to speak? Thanks. Before we move on to voting, I just also wanted to point out too that an internal consultation was undertaken and no obvious opportunities for exclusive community uses came up from that as well. and it's also been pointed out that there is enough space, there is enough space for casual hire in the area as well. So that's really all I needed to say, and that I look forward to the input from the community on open space opportunities. So I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Yeah. We can now call Councillor Stockman back in, please. We'll now move on to the Recreation and Leisure Strategy 2022 to 2030, the community engagement.
Mayor, I'd like to move the motion that Council 1 commences a community engagement process as outlined in Attachment 1, Community Engagement Plan, to seek feedback from the Nellenberg community on the draft Recreation and Leisure Strategy 2022 to 2030, Attachment 2. 2, considers public submissions at the Planning and Consultation meeting to be held on the 12th of April 2022. And 3, notes that any person who makes a submission in relation to the draft and a request to be heard in support of their submission be heard at the 12th April 2022 Planning and Consultation Committee meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. I have a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Perkins. Councillor Payne, would you like to speak?
Just briefly wanted to thank Yalma, Phillip, April Wilson and Rebecca Burton for the work that they've done. Also Heath as well for the work that he's done as well. He's part of this. We are a shire known for its sport and its active and passive recreation and its unstructured recreation. Team sports have suffered during lockdown, as many parts of the community have, and now is the time to rebuild. So I look forward to the Recreation and Leisure Strategy being embraced by the community so we can get moving again and enjoy the spaces and open spaces we have.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Would Councillor Perkins like to speak?
Yeah, just quickly, just looking at the strategy, I know there's a page on COVID-19 and recreation, and it notes the possible longer-term outcomes of COVID-19 on community sport. Could include declining participation in memberships. We've certainly seen that. A loss of volunteers, we've seen that for sure, and financial sustainability. So a lot of clubs have struggled, and we'll try to support them as best we can. The priorities in the strategy, there's 6 of them: increasing participation and usage of facilities and open space. So it's not all about structured sports clubs, footy, cricket and pavilions. It's very much around open space as well, and unlocking that value that we have in the community, and not everyone wants to involve themselves in structured sporting pursuits. A lot of it is use of our open space, actively or passively. The second priority is promoting equality and inclusion. We've got number 3 is infrastructure renewal and upgrade, and that's very important that more often than not, infrastructure, when it's renewed, it's actually upgraded. It's not often that we get like for like, because standards change over time, and disability access and inclusion in sporting facilities requires that more often than not there are upgrades. The 4th priority is community engagement and partnerships. The 5th is community development and strengthening, and the 6th is sustainable environment. So it's a fairly high-level strategy, as you expect a strategy to be, but yeah, looking forward to the feedback on it, and it certainly can be amended, improved following that consultation. So support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Would other councillors like to speak to the motion? No. Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. I'll now move on to Advocacy Priorities 2022. Councillor Stockman?
Yes, Chair. I'd like to move the motion to support the officer's recommendation that Council endorses the Advocacy Priorities 2022 as per Attachment 1.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. Do I have someone to second the motion?
Happy to second that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stockman, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Just very important, of course, advocacy. There's still a lot to do in our shire, and a lot of us have put in a lot of advocacy things for our wards. Most of council's advocacy is directed to the state and federal governments, and we all know that there's going to be elections with both of those in 2022. So whilst we work well in collaboration in council, also with working well with collaboration with the state and federal governments.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. Councillor Payne, would you like to speak?
Just to support the advocacy itself and to encourage our decisions regarding the Green Wedge for land management, conservation and agriculture. We're expected to look after the large green block of ours, and we need funds to keep up that work. So I hope that the state government can come through with that and help support us. And also the idea of a waste processing facility. It doesn't sound glamorous. It's going to be a major part of most councils very, very soon, and it's something we need to think about and plan for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Would Councillor Perkins?
I just wanted to quickly speak to the advocacy around the Diamond Creek Community Hub, and then although it's not implicitly stated in the document, you know, the intent is that whether it's the chicken or the egg, that what is needed at the Diamond Creek Community Centre really is for sport, and the gym and ultimately the basketball court need to move out to turn that into a community hub and a library. So, you know, if we're able to get funding for either or, but I think to get sport out of that building, we need them to have somewhere to go. So that might be a redeveloped outdoor pool and leisure centre in Diamond Creek and Elizabeth Street, and potentially a new basketball court. But, you know, we'll see what comes out of our advocacy. You know, we're not going to get it all in one hit, but it needs to start somewhere. But to get the community hub on the road, we might have to look at Elizabeth Street in the first instance. But officers are doing some work, some planning work on that at the moment. So there'll be more community consultation around those possible plans, you know, in the next few months. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Other councillors like to speak? No, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. We'll now move on to the complaints handling policy. Councillor Ramtramp, would you like to put forward the motion?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move that Council 1 adopts the updated complaint handling policy December 2021 in attachment 1, and 2 makes the complaint handling policy December 2021 publicly available on Council's website.
Thank you, Councillor Ramtran.
I'm happy to second the motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. Councillor Ramtran, do you wish to speak?
Yes, the new complaint handling policy really just formalises the way that we currently operate, but it's an important step because what it does is it puts it all in writing and really makes sure that there's a framework, a transparent framework that we can all rely on for how to handle complaints. I think this is a council that wants to take complaints very seriously. When a community member makes a legitimate complaint, it's something that we really do want to be able to hear and respond to and improve the way that we operate, because that's the whole purpose behind complaints. And, you know, we need to strive to be the best council that we possibly can. However, some complaints are not reasonable, some complaints are vexatious. There are a whole range of different issues that can occur when handling complaints, and this policy really carefully works through all of them and gives officers a framework that they can use to make sure that they are acting in the best interests of council and the community, and also to take on board as much as we possibly can from legitimate complaints to make sure that we're doing the best we can by our community. So happy to support the new policy.
Thank you, Councillor Ramtran. Councillor Stockman, do you wish to speak? Would any other councillor? Yes, Councillor Payne.
I just wanted to add that I think it's important that we maintain a civil and professional way of dealing with complaints with an air of mutual respect. Many decisions council make will not be agreed to by residents. That's the nature of council. But we can do it in a way that is respectful and doesn't descend into something that's much more aggressive. And I would hope that we keep an air of civility about handling our complaints and understanding that we are people trying to make the best decisions we can and to support council officers in their decisions as well.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Would anyone else like to speak to the... No, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. I'll now move to Panton Hill Bushland Reserve System User Group Advisory Committee, revised terms of reference and term extension. Councillor Ramtran.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move that Council 1 endorses the revised terms of reference of the Panton Hill Bushland Reserve System User Group Advisory Committee 2021 in Attachment 2, and 2 endorses a 1-year extension of the current Panton Hill Bushland Reserve System User Group Advisory Committee to the end of 2022. 3 requests officers present a further report before the end of 2022 on renewing the Panton Hill Bushland Reserve System User Group Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Egan. Councillor Amstram, would you like to speak?
Yes, look, if there was one thing I could change about the committee, it would be the name, because it really is a mouthful. But the name does really reflect what it is. It's a user group. As the councillor appointed as chair to the advisory committee, unfortunately over the last year I have only been able to make it to one of their meetings. They do only meet 4 times a year, so I haven't missed that much, but it seemed that for the first 3 meetings while I was the appointed councillor, every one of them clashed with some sort of all councillors important meeting. I know one of them was the council plan meeting, which I needed to be at, so I did miss 3 of them, which was a real shame. But I went to the most recent one, which was, I believe, last month, and I was really impressed. I was really, really impressed with the quality of the discussion and the input that we got from all of the people who were present there. A whole range of different users who, you know, generally wouldn't get along. You've got the horse riders, the mountain bikers, the walkers, the people who are interested in conservation, and they're all there in the one room collaborating fantastically about how to make sure that everybody can get the most out of that trail, out of those trails. So I was really, really impressed, and it really is a good example of what you can get when you've got a well-appointed advisory committee who really know what they're talking about and have experience and expertise in the area, and all come with something to contribute. So I was really, really impressed being at that meeting. And it really shows how valuable this particular advisory committee is, and how valuable it is to have a user group advisory committee. And they have balanced it out across all the different user groups. So each user group has a couple of representatives on the committee to bring forth the ideas that are relevant to that particular user group. So having that diversity in the room and having the ability to have a really respectful discussion between all of those different those different user groups, it really is valuable. So it shows the importance of having a diversity of perspectives on our advisory committees as well. So yeah, very, very pleased to support the recommendation, and hopefully we can have another fantastic year. While it may only be 4 meetings, I know there'll be 4 very productive meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ramcharan. Councillor Egan?
Yes, just to second everything that Councillor Ramcharan has just mentioned. As it's on my doorstep and I'm a current user of the trails, I see and reap the benefits of what goes on in that group, so I'm more than happy to support them, and especially having another term, because I think experience on some of these groups is where we get some of the most valuable input from members of the group, so happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. I'll now move on to tender report contract 2022 2122-026 Yarrambat Streetscape Works. Councillor Stockman.
Yes, Mayor Eyre, I'd like to move this motion. Just through the chair, just to governance, do I name the preferred tenderer now? No. Okay, so I'd just like to move the motion that support the officer's recommendation that council, and I will read all this out because it's very important for Yarrambat, accepts the tender submitted by the preferred tender for the sum of, for contingency, and enter into the following contract, number 2122026, Yarrambat Streetscape Works, 10th of January 2022 to the 30th of April 2022, authorises the Director of Infrastructure to finalise and execute the contract documentation, authorises the Director of Operations and Infrastructure to approve additional cost variations that are a result of unknown latent site conditions or changes to operational requirements throughout the term of the contract with a total value of no more than the approved budget for the project. Notes that any variations that exceed the agreed approved budget will require a further council resolution. Advises all tenderers accordingly. Makes public the decision regarding the contract, but the tender evaluation report, attachment 1, remain confidential on the grounds specified in the definition of confidential information in section 3(1)(g) of the Local Government Act 2020. Resolves that the preferred tenderer be named.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. Do I have a seconder for the motion?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. Councillor Stockman, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mayor, just as I was saying before, this is very important for Yarrambat, and if you're driving through Yarrambat, you'll notice that a streetscape is absolutely what it needs, and we're very excited. There's a lot of people very excited about this.
Thank you. Councillor Egan, would you like to speak? Would other councillors like to speak? No. I might just, before I put the motion to the vote, to point out too that we've received $100,000 in funding provided via the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions through the Neighbourhood Activity Centre Renewal Fund. So thank you for that contribution towards this. So I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. We'll now move on to... Oh, okay. We'll now also have Councillor Stockman name the awardee.
Okay, it's much my pleasure to name MJ Construction Group for the sum of $348,199 plus $69,639.80.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. We'll now move on to Tenderer Report Contract 2122-020 Andrew Park Pocket Park Construction.
Happy to move that motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Payne.
So I'd like to move the motion that 1, Council accepts the tender submitted by the preferred tenderer for the sum plus another sum of money and for contingency, and enter into the following contract. Number 2122-020, the Andrew Park Pocket Park Construction for the term the 10th of January 2022 to the 24th of June 2022. 2, authorises the Director of Operations and Infrastructure to finalise and execute the contract documentation. And 3, authorises the Director of Operations and Infrastructure to approve additional cost variations that are the result of unknown latent site conditions or changes to operational requirements throughout the term of the contract, with a total value of no more than the approved budget for the project. 4, notes that any variations that exceed the agreed approved budget will require a further council resolution. 5, advises all tenderers accordingly. 6, makes public the decision regarding this contract, but the tender evaluation report in attachment 1 remain confidential on the grounds specified in the definition of confidential information in section 3(1)(g) of the Local Government Act 2020. And 7, resolves that the preferred tenderer be named.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thanks, Councillor Egan. Councillor Payne, would you like to speak?
By rights, this should belong to Councillor Duffy. It's in her ward, so I'm just standing in her stead to move the motion. I don't have much to add, except that I look forward to congratulating the successful tenderer and to thank the procurement officers for the work they've done.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Egan, would you like to speak? Any other councillors like to speak?
That the works are funded by a $1.3 million grant via the Local Parks Program, New Pocket Parks through DELP, and our contribution from council was $61,000 plus dollars. So that's where the money's come from for the project.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. If there's no other councillors, I'll put to speak. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. We'll now move on to, we will actually have Councillor Payne.
Announce that the Council 1 accepts the tender submitted by the Commercial Scapes Proprietary Limited for the sum of $729,521.41 plus $145,904.282, which is interesting, for contingency exclusive of GST. I'll let the mathematicians in the Shire work out how they come to that amount of money.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. We'll now move on to Tender Report Contract 2122-021, De Fredericks Road Special Charge Scheme. Councillor Stockman.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the motion that Council support recommendation that Council accepts the tender submitted by the preferred tender for the sum of $+ for contingency exclusive of GST and enter into the following contract, number 2122-021, title De Fredericks Road Special Charge Scheme, term 10th of January 2022 to the 30th of April 2022, authorises the Director of Operations and Infrastructure to finalise and execute the contract documentation, authorise the Director of Operations and Infrastructure to approve additional cost variations that are a result of unknown latent site conditions or changes to operational requirements throughout the term of the contract with a total value of no more than the approved budget for the project. Notes that any variations that exceed the agreed approved budget will require a further council resolution, advises all tenderers accordingly, makes public the decision regarding the contract, but the tender evaluation report attachment 1 remain confidential on the grounds specified in the definition of confidential information in 3(1)G of the Local Government Act 2020, resolves that the preferred tenderer be named.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Payne.
Happy to second it.
Thank you. Councillor Stockman, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please, Mayor. And this is another one that's a lot of people on De Fredericks Road will be very excited to know this is moving ahead and starting early next year and going till April. I do get a lot of communication. We have had people come into the chamber, and some people always have a different side to the story as well. So look, I've been catching up with a lot of people from that road since that happened, since they've come into our chamber. This is a great move, and I think once it actually does get sealed for those who have had their road sealed, which I have personally about 4 or 5 years ago, it makes a really good difference, and you find the people that actually, a lot of them that actually voted against it, are quite happy in the end when they accept it.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. Councillor Payne, would you like to speak? Any other councillor like to speak? Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. We'll now have Councillor Stockman announce the contract.
The Council accepts the tender as submitted by the MJ Construction Group for the sum of $2,058,646.40 plus $51,729,028.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. Do we need to re-say the figures, or? It's 257. Yeah, it's 258,000 plus contingency. That's all right. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is Tender Report Contract 2021-088, Road Signs, Lighting, Grates, Covers and Associated Traffic Products. I will ask Councillor Ramcharan to move the motion.
Yes, I'd like to move that Council enters into the following panel contract arrangement via Procurement Australia for the list of preferred tenderers as disclosed in Attachment 1. Council Contract Number 2021-088, Procurement Australia reference 2409-0334, title Road Signs, Lighting, Grates, Covers and Associated Traffic Products for the term from the 1st of October 2021 to the 30th of September 2024. Options term extensions up to the 30th of September 2026. 2 authorises the Director of Operations and Infrastructure to finalise and execute the contract documentation. 3 authorises the Director of Operations and Infrastructure to approve contract term extensions for a maximum of up to 2 further years. 4, attachment 1 and all the other attachments confidential. I think there's some text missing there. 4, makes public the decision regarding this contract, but the following documents remain confidential on the grounds specified in the definition of confidential information in Section 3(1)(g) of the Local Government Act 2020, Attachment 1 and Appendices A to D. And 5, resolves that the preferred tender has been named.
Thank you, Councillor Ramtran. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Ramtran, wish to speak?
Yes, it's really business as usual, this one. Road signs, lighting, grates, covers, and associated traffic products. It's roads, rates and rubbish is, I think, the term that people like to trumpet about, which I don't really agree with that term. Council does a heck of a lot more than that, but it's the basics, and this one covers the basics. I am regularly passing on residents' concerns to the infrastructure team and asking for signage here and signage there and fix this pothole and can we do traffic control and whatever. And while our traffic team is incredibly busy and have a huge amount of requests coming in for such a small team, they do a great job managing it, and it really is easier than you'd expect to be able to get some of this stuff done when it really needs to be done. So this contract will help us continue that good work, and hopefully the traffic and transport team will have a good experience with the new contractors.
Thank you, Councillor Ramtran. Councillor Payne, would you like to speak?
Just to thank Lance Clark and the procurement team for this very complex procurement. It pretty much looks like a 5-sided Rubik's Cube when you take all the different criteria into account, and I thank them for the work that they've done.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Okay, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. We'll now move on to... Oh, sorry, we need to announce the contract award E.
I'll announce that Artcraft Proprietary Limited for categories 1, 3 and 4, Denifi Proprietary Limited TA Denifi Signs for categories 1, 3, 4 and 5, Roadside Services and Solutions for category 2, Terra Firma Industries for category 2.
Thank you, Councillor Ramtran. Okay, so we'll now move on to informal meetings of councillors' records, 14th of December 2021.
Happy to move the motion, Mayor.
Thank
The
you.
Council, in accordance with item 19 of Council's Governance Rule, Meeting Procedure, receives the informal meetings of councillors' records in attachment 1 for the meetings held.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for the motion?
Happy to second.
Thanks, Councillor Perkins. Councillor Payne, would you like to speak?
We met. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Councillor Perkins, any other... No? Okay, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. I'd just like to make a statement. Councillors and gallery, I would like to advise that Councillor Duffy has now joined us by mobile phone as a full councillor participant. The viewers at home will not be able to see Councillor Duffy, although you will be able to hear her. I, as the chairperson of the meeting, can hear Councillor Duffy, and in accordance with legal advice received, this satisfies our legal obligation. I'll now move to the motion, which is the proposed amendments C143 and C144 to the Nellenberg Planning Scheme, implementation of the Eltham and Diamond Creek Major Activity Centre Structure Plans 2020. And for those who are just joining us, this motion was moved moved later in to this part of the agenda. So I'll ask for someone to put forward the motion.
Happy to move the motion, Mayor.
Thank you.
And I'd like to move the motion that Council 1 requests the Minister for Planning under Section 8A of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 to authorise the preparation and exhibition of amendments C143 and C144 to the Nellenberg Shire Planning Scheme, and 2, on receipt of that authorisation, place amendments C143 and 144 to the Nellenberg Planning Scheme on exhibition.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. Councillor Payne, would you like to speak?
Yes, I'm a tad confused as to why this motion is described as contentious. I'm not exactly sure why, but I believe it's because it's an excuse to revisit decisions of previous councils and talk about the glory days. I think the planning scheme itself has been out for public exhibition for some time, and I don't think there are any surprises here. We're about to hear from a particular councillor who will say that there is something missing and we haven't consulted with our residents, but my understanding is that there has been ample consultation and that these planning amendments actually don't make any major changes to what already exists. I think stalling these amendments serve no purpose other than prosecuting or dancing on the grave of previous councillors, and I actually don't know that there is any issue that's been specified in deferring this motion, and it comes as a great cost. So it'll be interesting to see if councillors who voted to save money with the CFA vote to spend money, northwards of $80,000 on this. I think this is a move by one councillor, a Diamond Creek councillor, to tell the Eltham councillors that they don't know how to pay attention or don't understand the planning scheme, and I think we do. We've been in the job for a year. We get it, and I think the past council is past and we all need to move on. So I look forward to hearing what other councillors have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Egan.
Thank you, Mayor. We've just been talking about the KG Memorial Tower and how we lack money to do certain things, and now we want to throw another $80,000, and that's at a minimum, to go out and do more consultation on a massive piece of work that staff have nearly completed and that we've done countless iterations of consultation on already, not to mention that staff would have to start at the very beginning again when they have so many other projects to start, when we've now lost 6 staff due to COVID issues. We need money for so many things, just the basic things that council are responsible for, as Councillor Ramcharan mentioned, roads, rates and rubbish. We need funds for the KG tip capping. We need funds for the new BMX tracks. We need funds for drainage issues, playground renewals, new footpaths, and the list goes on. To spend more money now to tweak something that still has opportunities for people to submit to is a total waste of money and a total lack of good governance from this council. The fact that the order of the agenda has been changed by Councillor Perkins to get the result he wanted is an appalling example of lack of good governance. And as Councillor Payne has already suggested before, there are other things at play here, and I won't support this in any way. Are we to go over every decision that the previous council ever made, just because councillors don't like the outcomes? Every single councillor here needs money for issues in their wards, including Diamond Creek councillors, and they should be ashamed of even suggesting such folly and waste of ratepayers' funds. You know, we've just heard Councillor Perkins wanting funds for his new BMX tracks and now a new Diamond Creek Community Centre. And yes, 80,000 won't go a long way towards that, but it is a considerable sum of money. Rural residents are counting on funds for capital expenditure, which is where this money will have to come from, when we're nearly at the finish line, and I won't have funds wasted on superfluous consultation that is totally not needed. So therefore I am supporting this motion as has been put already by Councillor Payne. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. Would any other? Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Dare I walk into this one? Look, all I'm arguing for is deferment of this decision until the next PCC meeting. That's all I would like, to give members of the public the opportunity to present any concerns that they have to do with the Diamond Creek structure plans, and for council to consider that. Now, council might choose not to make any tweaks, but to sort of state or believe that deferring this decision until February, after the Christmas New Year period, let's defer it until we come back next year. There's no decision of spending $8, let alone $80,000 as a minimum. The reality is that the last council was a very different council. You can have as much community consultation as you like, but unless the community are absolutely convinced that council is going to listen, they might not, even take up those opportunities to consult. And that's the way that I believed a lot of the submitters would have felt on the last council with the council makeup that we had. I achieved some good wins in terms of the Diamond Creek structure plan. I was able to ensure that there was no increase in height limits from the previous structure plan. So I was very happy that I was able to get council support to that end. There was nothing of that substance put up by the Eltham councillors of the day, or they didn't get a chance. I'm sure the former councillor John Dumerick would have put up such an amendment to the motion, but the officer recommendation prevailed, and it was tweaked a little bit by Councillor Clark on the day. But I'd just like the Eltham community to get one last chance to have a say, to a different council on what they think of the Eltham structure plan. Look, I think this is probably the most important thing that we're going to do in this whole council term, and it's probably one of the most important planning things that will affect, the future of both Diamond Creek and Eltham. And I'm not going to support the motion. I'm foreshadowing a motion to defer this item until the next PCC, the next planning and community consultation meeting, where people will have the opportunity to speak to the motion. We don't want to keep going down this track and have a huge, massive people opposing our planning scheme amendment on the basis that they've got unresolved issues with the structure plans. So it's just an opportunity for council to listen to people and make a decision from there. To sort of state $80,000 minimum is an absolute nonsense. So I'm not supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Councillor Duffy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I wasn't expecting to be able to speak to, so I'm actually quite in supportive of what Councillor Perkins has said. I do remember this issue when it came up for the community in 2019, and I did put in a submission at the time. And one of the points that I made at that time was that I didn't think that there was enough community consultation, as people didn't know what was being planned. So, I do support the what Councillor Perkins is saying in asking for some additional time for the community to be able to put forward their views. I don't think anybody in Eltham wants to be driving down or walking down the main street with 5-storey towers on either side. I don't think people want to be coming in along the train line as a welcome to Nellenberg with 4-storey buildings along the train line with no trees and just graffiti. I'm not thinking of today. I'm thinking of in 10 years' time, in 50 years' time, what do we want our town to be? And I know that people don't want to be blindsided by the decisions of council. And yes, because there was a council that made a decision in the past doesn't mean that we can't revisit that if it's going to be of something that the community will benefit from in the future. So I think that that's the type of councillor that I would like to be, is to listen to what the community have to say and to make sure the community know what we're planning to do. And as a council, we have gone out this year and created a new community engagement policy. This is a perfect example of where the community does need to be engaged and know what's happening in our town, not just those who are avid council watchers, but how can we as council make sure that everybody knows what we're planning to do, because it's too late once it's done.
And also put your speaker on.
Point of order. I just want some clarification from Rosa on the current height limits in Eltham already. Can you just clarify that, please?
Can I just state that's not a point of order? Can we?
I said clarification.
Not a point of order. You can't interrupt debate. for a question. My understanding, like Councillor Duffy should be given the opportunity to finish, and then perhaps an opportunity to ask a question after that.
I thought she had finished.
Then Councillor Egan can ask a question.
Councillor Duffy, have you finished speaking? You may not see the clock, but you have 1 minute and 17 seconds left.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think the community have the right to know exactly what's in the Eltham activity major plan. It's a bit confusing, and I just like to make sure that there's no confusion, and so that there aren't extensions to what was compared to what is going to be. And I support what Councillor Perkins was talking about in not just limiting this to Eltham, but also including the Diamond Creek structural plans. And I remember at the time of the vote in 2019, the Eltham vote, there was no extension of the community being able to give an extra 2 weeks to know what was going on. But for the Diamond Creek decision, there was the extension where Council granted 2 weeks extra of community consultation. So why with matters that's so important to what the future of our townships are going to look like, would a council in the past say, yes, okay, you can have 2 weeks extra time for one township, but not for the other? So I think that this is, there are a number of elements that could come out to be less confusing if all of us have a bit more time to understand what was the old structure plan and what is the new structure plan. Because as a new councillor, I don't know all of the details of the community consultation. I'd like to know, what did the community say? What were their objections? Have we sufficiently listened to those and made modifications before we put in our final planning to the state government? Because once it's signed off, do we have the opportunity to make the changes that the community has asked for? And so for me as a new councillor, I'm just wanting to make sure that I do the right thing by the people who've elected
Duffy,
me.
You've gone over time now, so thank you for that. Councillor Duffy has gone over time, so she's going to stop speaking. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Ramcharan. Oh, sorry. Before Councillor Ramcharan will go to...
A question to Rosa. Can you clarify the current height limits in Eltham already, please?
Through the chair, the current height limit. Through the chair, the current height limits vary across the centre, and they range from 3 to 5 stories. Already. And there is one precinct which is around the station, the Eltham Station precinct, which is 3 to 4 stories, which we're proposing to change to 4 to 5 stories.
So it's just that area around the station?
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Ramcharan, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. Look, this is a difficult decision. I think the strategic planning team have done a fantastic job. They met with us a month or so ago and talked us through both the Diamond Creek and the Eltham plans. I was able to make it to their meeting about the Eltham one, but I had a clash for the Diamond Creek one. They did a great job of explaining the amendment. They did a great job of translating it from the structure plan. I am personally happy with what they've put together. However, what we put in the planning scheme is permanent. It is very difficult to change. It is very difficult to make any allowances. Once something goes into the planning scheme, if a decision has to come to our statutory planning team, who have to make a decision on whether or not to grant a permit, they have to do what the planning scheme says. So whatever we put in our planning scheme, we have to make sure that it is as good as it is going to get. I think this new council does have a very different perspective to the previous one. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, well, there'll be different opinions on that. And I'm not speaking harshly of the previous council. I'm just saying this new council has a different perspective. What we would do by deferring this to the PCC meeting is we would give community members the chance to address the new council, to address us, and for us to hear firsthand from them. It doesn't cost any more money. It's not going to require any extra work of our strategic planning team for us to defer this. If we make changes to it, it will. If we make changes to it, it'll cost money. It'll put more work on our planners. But for the purpose of deferring this to another council meeting so we can hear from speakers from the community, it will not cost more money. It will not put more work on the team. But what it will do is it will give us a chance to hear from the community about what their views are on this amendment. And I think that is important. I want to hear from the Eltham community, and that's why I do support a deferment. I think chances are we will adopt the amendments as exhibited, or sorry, as they currently are at the February PCC. If this does get deferred, I expect we probably won't be able to change them, but it's still important to give the community their chance to have their say. And if a really significant issue were to come up, then it would be up to council as to whether we do spend that extra money to make the changes. Because again, what we put in our planning scheme has to be perfect. So I certainly want to hear from the community on this one, and that's why I've made the difficult decision to not support this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan.
Do I get a right of reply?
Yes, you do. Oh, yes, Councillor Stockman.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm a little undecided at this moment, which seems I'm that way a lot. But I just wanted to clarify the cost, and 80,000 has been thrown around, and $8 has been thrown around. So that's sort of where my feeling lies. So if I can, two different things. But if I could just, can I through the chair call Rosa up again and just ask her a question that the way that this is going, is it a chance it's going to be 80,000 or $8?
Through the chair. The answer is reliant or dependent upon the outcome from the PCC meeting. So to defer the item to the PCC meeting will give the submitters an opportunity to present their views on what should or should not change in the structure plan, which would then inform the planning scheme amendment process moving forward. It's up to council then to decide whether they choose to do something with those submissions, and if they do, that will necessitate a review of the structure plans that have been adopted, and for us to go through that review process again, make changes, report back to council to seek a resolution to adopt a new version of the structure plans, and that may incur fees of up to $80,000 because this is consultant work that we would have to seek their specialist advice upon.
Thank you.
Just while you're there, Rosa, through the chair, can I ask a question as well? So is the $80,000, is that based on what the structure plans cost from Woe to Go? Where'd the $80,000 come from?
So through the chair, a normal structure plan development process costs around $80,000.
But you'd envisage we wouldn't be going, like if we were to make changes, it wouldn't be starting again. It is a decision of council. I suppose that the point that I put that I think Richard was trying to get clarification on was, does this decision in deferring this matter for 8 weeks cost $80,000?
That is dependent upon the outcome of the PCC meeting and what councillors choose to do with the submissions that they receive through that PCC process.
So that would be a future decision of council?
That would be a future decision
but
of
it's
council.
not one being made tonight?
No.
Thank you.
Councillor Stockman, had you finished? You had a question?
Yes, that's it. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Payne, right of reply.
Yes. Again, we've had a number of different scenarios put to us. It's suggested that if we don't make any changes, it won't cost any money, which begs the question, why are we not simply going ahead with this? If they do make changes, it will cost money, and that's something that planners would understand better than council laws, I would have thought. The deferment itself and the changes will cost money, and it will pull apart the strategy itself. The council has changed, there's no doubt about that. We've been a year into this. I don't think there's any demonstration we need to do or any proof that we need to take, especially if it costs tens of thousands of dollars. And while I'm happy to revisit the Windsor Diamond Creek, and hear that someone's been on mayor twice and been on council 12 years. It never gets old. But that's more of a Christmas party thing to talk about. This is actual money that we are talking about here. The Eltham councillors understand what the risks are, and we actually understand what's involved, and I appreciate the remedial class from Diamond Creek, but I think we get it. The idea that Councillor Duffy would suggest that we have 50 years of planning ahead of us is delusional. We don't. We have a few years ahead of us, and the idea that there are 5-storey buildings being planned for Eltham is, again, ridiculous. It is not a high-growth area. We have empty shops as we speak, and there are no plans for large, even 3 or 4 or 5-storey canyons being built in Eltham at all. It's a furphy. We've been to the community. This will cost money. We have just voted to save money, I would have thought. And the council, the community have said we want action. So if we are listening to the community, let's have action. Let's move on. The old council's gone. The new council's here. Let us do the work of council and move on.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. I think everyone's had an opportunity to speak. Councillor Duffy is still with us. That's good. Okay, so I'm actually going to put the motion to the vote. So all in favour of the current motion, please raise your hand. Okay, and those against? And Councillor Duffy, can you please say what your vote is?
Yes. Thanks, Mayor. I'm going to vote against.
Okay, so that is... Division is called. So all those in favour of the motion as is Councillor Stockman, Councillor Egan and Councillor Payne. And all those against the motion is Councillor Perkins, Councillor Ramcharan, Councillor Duffy and Councillor Eyre. The motion has been lost. We now call for an alternate motion.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have the date, but basically is to defer this item to the February Planning and Community Consultation meeting and to put the agenda and to put the agenda and the attachments associated with this item on the website.
The computer has frozen, so we can't change the amendment, the page. But do we have a seconder for the motion as put forward by?
Can we just confirm the motion again?
Okay. Can you please confirm the motion, Councillor Perkins?
To defer CM 160/21, proposed amendments C 143 and C 144 and the rest of the title. Defer that agenda item to the February Planning and Community Consultation meeting, and further to list this agenda item for tonight's meeting and all the attachments, the officer report and attachments on the council website. So if people want to view the attachments and the documentation we've been given tonight, it's easily accessible. I think a lot of it's already there on the website, but just make sure that all the information, including the report, is on the relevant sections of the council website.
Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, I think well, at least one Eltham councillor is perhaps a little bit overly concerned at the prospect of getting some help from the Diamond Creek councillor. We're not bad people, we get along quite well with Eltham, and actually had hours of conversation with Carlotta today, and it's some of the people from Eltham who have been very, very active for many years, who I suppose at the end of the day jogged my conscience in terms around this process. And while I was happy with the outcome broadly for Diamond Creek and what I was able to achieve, luckily on the night, because Councillor Jane Ashton voted with me, and you know, she ordinarily wouldn't. But I did have a win in terms of limiting future increases in height in Diamond Creek. That opportunity didn't avail itself at the time to Eltham. I don't think it really mattered what the community consultation was about. That was a very different council and a very different set of Eltham councillors, let's put it that way. So look, I think the community would broadly welcome an opportunity just to you know, give us a little bit of a think about you know, their concerns, because the reality is a lot of the concerns put by community to the former council, particularly around the Eltham area, weren't necessarily taken on board by council. You know, I'm certainly open for any other suggestions in Diamond Creek, and indeed one of our questioners tonight, I forget her name, I think it's Gilla Schnapp, has some concerns, of course, around the Diamond Creek MAC, and I think, although I don't think those concerns are terribly valid, they are concerns nonetheless. So, look, I think, as I've said before, all this motion does is defers the decision, you know, till after the Christmas period, till after people come back from holidays. If it's such an important decision, it's taken a long time up to now. This is the start of a 2-year process. Surely by just deferring this decision, you know, another 8 weeks should not be an issue. In the past, of course, this sort of matter would have come to the planning committee meeting, or the what's now called the consultation committee meeting. So it would give people the right to speak to it. So that's all we're really doing, is moving it to the next meeting to give people the right to speak to the matter. You know, on that night we can do what the motion says, or we might you know, we might make another decision. I don't know. Let's see where council lands. But you know, it's just an opportunity to listen to people who are passionate about the issue. Understandably, it is, and as Councillor Ramtran said, that this is effectively a permanent change. We won't be able to wind it back. We're embedding it into the planning scheme. You know, we just want to get it right, and I think by deferring it for a couple of months till after the new year, after January, is the best thing that we can do at the moment. And you know, if there are changes made, well, council will make that decision around the available budget, how much we want to tweak. The more we change, the more it will cost, of course. So that will certainly be a consideration. Council may resolve to make no changes at all. So we'll just have to see how it goes. You know, the claim of $80,000 minimum. You know, nothing could be further from the truth, as we've heard from Rosa, because it was, you know, an $80,000 maximum, and that was on the premise that we would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater and starting again. Now I don't support that. No, that's not going to happen. But yeah, hopefully this motion will get support. I'm sure it will in some form. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Councillor Ramtram, do you wish to speak? No. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Duffy, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to say that I do support the idea of deferring to be able to hear more from the community, and when I'm very conscious of costs and making sure that we spend money appropriately, especially after this COVID period where so many people have been affected. But one thing does come to mind is that, you know, not so long ago, the council was given the opportunity to sell land in our shire to the state government to build a hospital, and council voted against that. That would have been $9 million into the coffers of the council, and an amazing facility and service facility for our council. So, you know, I don't want to quibble over $80,000, $2,000. I want to make sure that we plan properly for the future, and that we give the community every opportunity to be able to participate in planning what that future will be. I don't want there to be I don't want us to miss this opportunity, and as a new councillor, I want to be able to ensure that I can put my head on the pillow at night and know that I've done everything I can for the people in Diamond Creek and Eltham in making sure that the future of our townships looks and reflects the values that they have. I think that that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Anyone else wish to speak? I'll put the motion to the... Councillor Egan?
Yeah, I just want to remind councillors that the minister still has to approve all of this. So if what we put forward doesn't align with state policy, they won't approve it, and all of this will have been for nothing. You can already build up to 5 stories in Eltham. I don't know how many times we have to say that. This will make no difference except to those properties around the station. And as Councillor Payne has already said, where are all the applications to build these 5-storey buildings? It's not for the entirety of Eltham, it is around the station. What we're quibbling over here is just a nonsense and a total waste of time. Yes, it mightn't cost any money to defer it, but it's sure as hell going to take up time for staff reorganising everything. And I won't be supporting it, obviously.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. I'll put the motion to the vote.
I get a right of reply.
You do get a right of reply.
And probably just to, Councillor Egan's point, not all of Eltham currently can build up to 5 stories, and there is a small part around the station where, you certainly can't. Some of the changes that were put in, and actually be good to have a look at the adopted motion from last year, both for Diamond Creek and for Eltham. But the fact is that Councillor Clark did make some changes to the officer recommendation in that motion. It called for some treatments around the old Shire office site in terms of, having a transitional approach in between the library and any new structure on that site. The changes that he made were not adverse to the character of Eltham. I think they probably improved the officer recommendation, but they were there nonetheless. But I'm not sure that some others that would have been put by John Dumerick never got the light of day, because the 2 people that voted against that decision was myself and former Councillor John Dumerick, and of course that motion was supported by the five others, I believe. It might have been Councillor Brooker that didn't support it. So it was a 4-3 split. I went back through the minutes today trying to see what Councillor Dumerick had put up, but there was no, he had no opportunity. So certainly over the next month or 2, it would give us the opportunity to have a bit of a chat to John in terms of his recollections and what changes or improvements he would have put forward had he had the opportunity. And there might be an opportunity now into the future, but we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. I will now put the motion that was from Councillor Perkins to the vote to defer to the next planning and consultative meeting in February. All those in favour of deferral? Councillor Duffy, how do you vote? Councillor Duffy?
Yes, I vote in favour.
You vote in favour of deferring?
Yes, please.
Okay. All those against? Division has been called. So all those in favour of deferring, we've got Councillor Perkins, Councillor Ramcharan, Councillor Duffy, is that correct? You wish for deferral?
Yes, please.
Yeah, and Councillor Eyre. And all those against? We've got Councillor Egan, Councillor Stockman and Councillor Payne. Okay, we'll now move on to the next item, which is the BMX site near Challenger Street, Reserve, Diamond Creek. Councillor Duffy, would you like to move that motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move the motion.
Do you have the wording in front of you?
Yes, I've got the wording that was on the agenda that was advertised and printed, published on the council website.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to move that council requests officers to work with VicTrack, Metro Trains and Melbourne Water to mitigate the impacts and risks associated with BMX jumps to the west of the railway line in the area of VicTrack land leased to Nellenberg Shire Council near Challenger Street Reserve, Diamond Creek. Where impacts and risks cannot be mitigated, proceed with the removing the BMX jumps and rehabilitating the area. Point 2, request officers work with VicTrack to excise the area of VicTrack land between the railway line and Diamond Creek from the lease with Nellenberg Shire Council, and council execute a deed of variation of lease to reflect the amended leased area. And point 3, endorses the allocation of up to $50,000 from the 2021-2022 budgeted borrowings to consult and work with BMX specialists to develop a draft concept BMX and off-ride facility at a suitable alternate location.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Perkins.
Mary, I just wonder, with the approval of Councillor Duffy, if we can just add another small dot point, and it's just basically to request officers to provide a PDF version of this report and the attachments onto the Participate Nellenberg website, where there is discussion and feedback to do with the new BMX facility. So do you need me to read that out again? You know, it's basically for officers to publish a PDF version of this report and the attachment onto the Participate Nellenberg BMX site.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy, are you okay with the additional dot point being added as per Councillor Perkins' suggestion?
Yes, I'm happy for that to be included. I'm just wanting to double check. Does that mean that the community is able to provide feedback for submissions through, with that being available?
There is open consultation on new BMX at the moment, I believe, on Participate Nellenberg. So it's just as a reference document to publish it on that forum. So, you know, people have got this information accessible to them. They can see potentially why we've made the decision we've made tonight.
This is what's available to them. I'm happy to have that included.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just very briefly, there was a lot discussed about BMX tracks and BMX rides and jumps at the October meeting. This is unstructured and freestyle bike tracks. They're really important to the community, especially to our youth. And you know, participating in recreation and leisure activity like this brings connection. You know, it supports mental health and well-being, and it's something that we make sure is available to the people who, you know, love doing BMX activity. This is coming up as an Olympic sport as well, so, you know, having council look to allocate money to the future of BMX and what we can do to come up with a draft in consultation with the community and with BMX specialists at a suitable location, I think is a good thing, because we know that at the moment the locations that have been used, particularly one where people access it by walking across the railway line over the Diamond Creek, is not safe for anybody. So I just would hate to see there be a terrible accident, because you know, that's what could happen any day when people are accessing the BMX jump that is there at the moment, and I just don't want to see that possibility of an accident happening to anybody in our community, young or old. So I think that this is a positive thing in council following up the October meeting where we want to consult with the community. It's putting some money to be able to look at putting together a concept in a suitable location, and you know, let's make sure we've got the right location that's safe and accessible to those who want to use it, and it also works for the community that live around it. I think that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Perkins, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. this motion's got a few parts to it. The first dot point requesting officers to work with the owners of the land, VicTrack Metro Trains, Melbourne Water, to mitigate the risks and impacts associated with the BMX jumps on the area that's further north, slightly further north of the jumps that were removed by VicTrack recently, and if those risks can't be mitigated, for the jumps to be removed. So I'm very keen for the public to have access to this report more broadly, so they can see that there is a policy around the BMX jump and mountain bike track policy that goes down to back to 2005. It's 17 years old. This is not a new issue for this council or for any council really across Victoria. The report bears out some of the issues. It's damaged the environment, illegal earthworks, illegal structures with no building approval or permits. It's stuff being done on public land, without the authority of the landowner or the land manager. There's photos in the report. It basically spells out for people the sort of things that council are considering. And while it sounds great for kids to be able to go and take over some bushland and build whatever they want and jumps and all the rest of it, it does at times just go a bit too far. And this one has. The photos bear it out. The officer report, the arborist report bears that out, and really council is left with no option but to demolish those jumps. It also, the second dot point, highlights the fact that it's not our land. This is land leased off VicTrack by council. For what reason, I'm not sure. But it's certainly not land that we should be leasing it. So the request is that we vary that lease and that we excise that part of the land and hand that responsibility of the land management of that part of that creek reserve back to the owner, which is VicTrack. And probably the important bit is endorses $50,000, which gets things kick-started around doing that consultation and working with BMX specialists and local community to develop a draft concept, being a BMX and off-ride facility at a suitable location. I've spoken about what I believe to be a potentially suitable location, which is just a bit further south of the site we're talking about now, off Allendale Road. Of course, that would have to meet all the planning approvals, and that's probably where the officers will start first and speak to the planning department and see what is possible in that part of the world. It's not going to be the same, but having the report out in the public realm, I think, is the best way to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Ramcharan.
Yes, look, just to say that this is not a decision that I take lightly. I've always said that council should think very, very carefully before taking down BMX track. They really do mean a lot to young people locally to have that, to have access to somewhere to do what they love. And as I think I said last meeting, I'm a cyclist. I've never done BMX. I am not brave enough, but I do ride on the roads. And if somebody tried to stop me from riding on the roads or took out bike lanes or whatever, I would be up in arms, and I'm sure the rest of the cycling community would be as well. And I feel like that's what happens when you try to stop people doing something they love, and that's unfortunately when BMX tracks get removed, we're stopping our young people from doing something that they love. So it really is a decision we ought to be thinking about very carefully. There are a range of BMX jumps and also mountain bike tracks in Nellenberg, which we should be doing our best to preserve. If they're on council land, we should be leaving them there if that is at all possible. But there are always considerations relating to safety, the environment, amenity, a whole range of things, and also managing our risks as a council, because the last thing we want is for someone to be seriously injured and for us to have to be liable for that, and we can't be passing costs like that onto ratepayers. So unfortunately, with this particular jump that's referred to in this motion, It is a particularly dangerous one. There are also some particularly significant impacts on the trees on that site. But I think the biggest concern for me, and I think for most of us, is the fact that there is a chance that young people accessing that track could be hit by a train. And that's not something that I want my community to be exposed to, and it's not a risk that council can be exposing ourselves to. So that's why we need to make the difficult decision in this case to take down this particular jump. But I don't want this setting a precedent. There are plenty of other jumps across Nellenberg. I would rather not know where they are. But when they get found, we need to think long and hard about whether we should be taking them down or whether they should be left back up. And hopefully when we renew our policy on BMX, because the current one is quite good, it does talk about how we can leave them up, but it is also very outdated. So when we renew that, I really hope that we can come up with some sort of framework that's going to work so that we can leave as many tracks in as we possibly can. But unfortunately, this one has to go. And I really hope that that $50,000 allocation to get us closer to building a new facility, probably on Allendale Road, I hope that helps to make up for this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ramtram. Would anyone, any other councillors like to speak? No? I'll just say a few words. That I understand and acknowledge the anguish that came from the BMX area being demolished. But Council recognises the interest and need for suitable BMX facilities in our shire. We need to balance that with our public safety responsibilities and so need to manage any risk associated with the site. But we are definitely committed to supporting the BMX community with options, and this recommendation demonstrates that. So with an allocation of funds, we'll be able to develop a concept, and I look forward to all of the community being involved in that process, as will I. So I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And Councillor Duffy?
Yes, I'm in favour, thank you.
Would you mind saying that again, please?
Yes, I support the motion. I'm in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy, and everyone else. That's carried unanimously. And acknowledging that that was with an additional .4. Okay, we now move to item 12. Sorry about that, I had all my paperwork mixed up. We're now on the notice of motion, which is Refugees Community Sponsorship Program 2021. Do I have a mover for the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll move that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Will you read the motion, please?
Yes, I'd like to move that Council 1 notes Shire Council, I'll start again. I'd like to move that Council notes Nellenberg Shire is a community which welcomes refugees and reaffirms our commitment made in 2016 to be a refugee welcome zone. Point 2, that Council notes that the federal government's community sponsorship program enables individuals to cover a refugee resettlement costs, and that while this program is very expensive for sponsors, it comes out of Australia's existing humanitarian intake, so does not provide any additional spaces. Point 3, that Council requests the Mayor write to the relevant federal ministers and the opposition spokespersons, copying the local members, the Honourable Kevin Andrews, Kate Thwaites and Rob Mitchell, immediately to call on the federal government to do the following things. 1, to improve and expand the community sponsorship program to ensure the program does not take places from others in need, provides adequate support and services, limits the cost on sponsors, allows community, family and businesses to act as sponsors, creates more places for people in need of protection to settle in Australia. In addition, in the letter, we were asking for those refugees medically evacuated to Australia from Nauru and Papua New Guinea to be provided permanent residency, access to Medicare, employment and government support by way of humanitarian visa. Next part of the letter would be to ask for the government to take action to immediately resettle those refugees and people seeking asylum detained in Nauru and Papua New Guinea, allowing them access permanent resettlement options in Canada, the USA, New Zealand and Australia by way of humanitarian visa. And lastly, to increase Australia's intake of Afghani refugees by 20,000 in addition to our country's regular humanitarian intake.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan. Councillor Duffy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Some people may say that this is not the business of local council, that this is something that is in the realm of federal government. I agree that federal government are the people who create the decisions regarding refugees. But as a local council, I've had many people approach me asking for council to do more to support refugees and to listen to their concerns. The Grandmothers for Refugees, Janine Lawrence, Meg Lestrange and Gillian Essex have all approached me. Amnesty have approached me, Katrina North and the group of people that belong to that organisation. I've also had approaches from Suzette Kabbalah from Welcome to Eltham and the Montmorency Asylum Seekers Support Group. And they're all asking for the same thing. They're asking for council to advocate on their behalf to create a better opportunity and a better future for refugees. It's not illegal to be a refugee, and refugees that have come to this country haven't done an illegal action, yet we don't treat them in a way that, gives them human decency in a lot of instances with what we've seen over the last few years. And so in the letters that I've received and in the and even in going into with a school teacher from CLC, I've seen firsthand people locked away in the detention at the Park Hotel in Carlton. I'd just like to make a short comment from one of the letters that I've received. In this letter, a community member says, I've come to personally know many of the refugees and people seeking asylum within our community, and this has given me awareness of just how much they require due to the traumatic events which necessitate flight from their home countries and their need to learn a new language and culture in order to re-establish the kind of lives that most of us take for granted. However, the ones who live within our community are the lucky ones. My greatest concern is for those held indefinitely in onshore and offshore detention or in limbo on temporary visas. The uncertainty, the fear of being sent back to countries where they are at risk of torture or death and the harsh conditions under which they are held greatly add to the already high level of trauma, causing mental and physical health problems in many cases. This is unconscionable, and I believe it is our duty to stand up to our federal government and to call out the cruelty being inflicted on these people in whatever forum is available to us. Like other countries, like Canada, New Zealand, do far better in this regard and reap the benefits that refugees like Baruz Bishani give back to societies that welcome them. Our loss is and New Zealand's gain, in the words of the community member that wrote me that letter. I suppose what I'm hoping that council will do with this motion is stand with other councils. There are 32 councils across Australia that have written letters to the federal government asking for improvements to the community sponsorship program, and I'm aware of refugees in our community, and in particular a young woman who has fled Afghanistan recently, who wants to start again and should be given the opportunity to do that. And I'm really indebted to the people in our community who make this part of their challenge each day to espouse the values of freedom and decency, and to be able to help people who are not as fortunate as us. I would hate to imagine what it was like to have to flee your country. We've all experienced what lockdown has done in the last couple of years, and I can't imagine what it would be like to be locked up in a hotel room for 2 years when you're trying to get medical treatment in Australia and you're already deemed a refugee. So this is not asking council to spend money. This is asking council to send a letter to the federal government to advocate for improvements for people that need it. And this is an action in response to a number of community members that I hold in high esteem for the work that they do, and I'm trying to help them with their action and their voice be heard by the people who are able to make change in this area. I think that's kind of where I'd probably like to leave it. There's lots of information available about the community sponsorship program. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but people who have questions are most welcome to contact me or contact Amnesty or the Grandmothers for Refugees for more information about that. So I hope that the council will support me in this motion today to ask our leaders and elected representatives at a federal level to, consider these changes.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Ramcharan, would you like to speak?
Yes, look, I think Councillor Duffy has really said most of what needs to be said. This might not necessarily be within council's remit, as many people would tell us, but at the end of the day, we can advocate, and it is an issue that I know many in our community care about, as we could tell from the number of questions that came in when certain groups within the community found out that this was up for debate tonight. So I'm happy to support the motion. I don't know how much difference a letter from a local council is going to make, but I really do hope that if we're one of many, then maybe the federal government will listen to us. It's not about spending council money. We're not going to be sponsoring refugees ourselves. All this motion does is to advocate to the federal government so that we can ask for them to support sponsors and to not take away from other places in our humanitarian intake when people sponsor a refugee. It really is an indictment on us as a nation to see the way that refugees are treated. This is a fantastic country. It's a fantastic place to live. We're all so incredibly privileged to live here, and we ought to be sharing that with those who are less fortunate and those who really don't have anywhere else to go. So that's why I think I and so many other people in our community really are passionate about this issue. Thank you to Councillor Duffy for the work that you've put into this. I know it hasn't been easy getting this motion written up, but I think hopefully if we're one of many councils writing a letter, then we'll at least get the attention of the federal government, even if we're not able to convince them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan. Would any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, thank you. I'll speak against the motion. I certainly agree with Councillor Ramcharan in terms of that concern. It is beyond our remit. It's certainly not in our remit. It's not this advocacy. You read the motion, you sort of think, oh well, that doesn't do too much harm. It's about an officer writing a letter, and that's probably all that's required of council. But certainly that's not the community perception. If we support this motion, we will get more and more of the question that was asked tonight of Janine Lawrence, because supporting that motion will again and again have these sort of things put to us. Will the Nellenberg Council set up an ongoing support scheme as distinct from one-off grants, which could involve an inclusive employment program similar to that operating in Banyule, whereby refugees and other local residents facing barriers to employment can be offered job opportunities that will help them experience in a supportive work environment, learn skills in areas appropriate to their experience and capabilities, and develop confidence and knowledge about how an Australian workplace operates. And, could council offer financial assistance to help refugees prepare themselves for a satisfying and independent future? This could include helping with fees and other costs involved in undertaking a course of studies or assisting with costs of rental accommodation. Could we be helping local community groups such as Amnesty International, Grandmothers for Refugees, Welcome to Eltham and Montmorency Asylum Seekers Support Group in sponsoring refugees to settle into our community under an improved and expanded community support program? So, these are the questions that supporting this motion will lead to. And, how I would like to allocate council resources and ratepayer monies and officer time are on those things that directly impact in a positive way our own residents. Now, it is appropriate to, on an individual level to lobby our local federal members, but I don't think as a council we should be involved in election advocacy, which really is lined up, from what I can tell, to have a fair crack at the current federal Liberal government, and around an election time, which it currently is, and for ourselves to be put in a pigeonhole where we're seen to be, not supportive perhaps of our current federal government. That's not, what a council should be doing. We don't know what the outcome of the election is going to be. We could end up with a Labor federal government or a Liberal federal government. We have to work with both. And I just think the timing of this is poor. I sort of think I respect and acknowledge Councillor Duffy's, passion on this issue. But my time in council, I've never had anyone approach me about the plight of refugees, and that's okay, from Diamond Creek, and as Councillor Payne has said, and we are perhaps a little bit different.
We've got time.
All right, go on, thank you.
Thank you. Would any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Egan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I can't support this either, much as I feel for these people, and I'd just like to point out my parents have sponsored refugees for over 20 years now, but this is not in Council's remit, and nor has it ever been, and it is not in the new Local Government Act, nor has it ever been, and nor have any of the residents in my ward contacted me this week, or now, or in the past. I've had plenty of emails from people that Councillor Duffy's obviously got to call all of us. And as Councillor Perkins has rightly pointed out with the questions tonight, people are expecting us to fund these issues. And as we've already discovered tonight, we aren't in a very strong financial position to fund any of these extra issues. I know Councillor Duffy feels incredibly strongly about all of these federal issues. Perhaps she should have stood for a federal spot instead of a Local Government Act, because they're the only ones who can do anything about this. Indeed, the federal government has just only this week increased the intake of refugees this week, and the Labor Party voted against it, which I found incredibly interesting. I don't know what the actual numbers are now, but that's only happened at the beginning of this week. It isn't in Council's remit, and yes, we do more than roads, rates and rubbish, but 39 out of all of Australia's councils is a drop in the bucket. That isn't a lot. 6%. Yeah, not a lot at all, and it'll only damage us to be lumped into that basket, to be quite frank. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Okay. Yes, Councillor Stockman.
Firstly, I'd like to commend the federal government on the community sponsorship program. Thanks to Councillor Duffy's motion, I've had the opportunity to be made more aware of the program, which was introduced by the Australian federal government a few years ago. I agree that we can use this program to go one step further in humanitarian aid and be recognised globally along with countries, or continue to be recognised globally along with countries like Canada, US, New Zealand as a caring humanitarian country, and also better allow who wants to contribute and sponsor, and that's what this program does. Some councillors will argue that local council should only deal with local issues. I disagree. By alerting the federal government, reaffirming, if you will, that Nellenberg and in particular Eltham is a refugee-friendly place that helps the Australian government identify key areas. I think this motion, amongst other things, is a sharing of information to other levels of government. And sharing information can actually save time and money and achieve a good result. We are the closest level of government to the community, and it's very important for us to let higher level of governments know what the community is wanting. Councillor Duffy is being very proactive with this motion and expanding on the federal government community-sponsored program, which was set up in 2017. I believe we can achieve something special and, importantly, offset some of the national costs and risks of accepting refugees by allowing business and individuals to help out in a greater way. And I wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. I understand that Councillor Duffy would like right of reply.
Thank you. And I know it's not ideal that I'm not there in person. I apologise that I'm not in the chamber. This issue is very close to my heart, and I think that we can make a difference. I am wanting to make sure that I'm a good local councillor. There's no ambition for me to be in federal parliament. I just want to be able to, do what the people in my community are asking for. And in this instance, writing a letter asking for people to be better treated is not a hard thing to do. I'm not asking for council to commit money into spending all sorts of extra things, but I do think that that is a good idea if we can have a traineeship that's available in the right place. But it might not be for council to do that. It could be maybe something that, we could help foster through the partnerships that we have with other organisations like the Yarra Plenty Libraries, etc. But just to get back to the matter at hand, I do not feel comfortable knowing that there are people who have a legal right through international law, through the United Nations, charters, to seek refuge, and they've come to our country for help, and our country is not helping them. Our country is actually hurting them. And just if I go back to one comment from one of the letters that I've received from a member in the community, is it says Australia's policy of offshore detention has resulted in 14 refugees and people seeking asylum losing their lives. Many more suffer ongoing mental and physical health issues as a result of their detention. Over these 8 years, more than $10 billion of taxpayer dollars has been spent. So, the federal government and the state government give us money, which I'm very grateful for the grants that we receive to be able to do good work. In our council plan and our health and wellbeing plan, we're looking at how are we contributing to the ongoing mental health and physical health of the people that live in our area. And I know that for the people that live in our area, this is something that frustrates them and stresses them and causes much distress. For those people who are asylum seekers and refugees...
Councillor Duffy, you've run out of time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Duffy, how do you wish to vote?
I'm in favour. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so all those against? Okay, so the motion has been carried. Division. Okay, all those in favour? So we've got Councillor Ramcharan, Councillor Payne, Councillor Stockman, Councillor Duffy and Councillor Eyre. All those against? We have, sorry, I didn't mean to put my hand up. We've got Councillor Payne, Councillor Perkins and Councillor Egan against the motion. So it's carried. Sorry. Okay, I called you the wrong person. All right. I need to take my glasses off. I actually can't see that far. So, all right. So that motion, we now move to delegates reports. We do not have any delegates reports, so I'll move on to item 14, which is supplementary and urgent business. We have two urgent business items. We have one which is Business Nellenberg submission to parliamentary inquiry into protections within the Victorian planning framework. So the recommendation is that Council, in accordance with Clause 57 of the Governance Rule Meeting Procedure, omit the item of urgent business relating to Nellenberg submission to parliamentary inquiry into protections within the Victorian planning framework. Do I have a mover to omit the item to urgent business? Councillor Egan? Thank you.
Happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Okay, so now we have the item which...
Do you want me to say the recommendation?
Yes, please.
That Council, in accordance with Clause 57 of the Governance Rule Meeting Procedure, admit the item of urgent business relating to Nellenberg submission to parliamentary inquiry into protections within the Victorian planning framework.
Thank you for reading the recommendation, and we have Yeah. Okay, and we have Councillor Payne who seconded the motion. So now I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Okay, let's move on to the actual item, which is here, which is urgent business item Nellenberg, submission to parliamentary inquiry into protections within the Victorian planning framework. Do I have a mover for the motion, please?
Is it that one or the other one?
Yeah, that one. Thank you. That's you, Councillor Perkins.
Okay, sorry, I've got my order wrong. Okay, yeah, I'd like to move that Council adopts Nellenberg Shire Council's submission to the parliamentary inquiry into protections within the Victorian planning framework as attachment 1, and directs council officers to formally lodge the adopted submission to the Environment and Planning Committee, and 2, makes the adopted submission to the parliamentary inquiry into protections within the Victoria planning framework publicly available on council's website.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Do I have someone to second this motion? Thank you, Councillor Egan. Councillor Perkins, do you wish to speak?
Look, just briefly, it's just congratulate officers on the work. It's a very, very good submission that really does detail a lot of planning issues that we have in Nellenberg and suggests a way forward. We're hoping the state government will listen. They've certainly been doing a lot of fast-track planning approvals and trying to cut red tape, but they've cut down on a lot of consultation and discussion with not only councils but community as well. Just some of the highlighted bits. I'll read out a couple of bits in the submission. One is around the impact of 1030 and 1050 exemptions. I'll just read this bit out. Council has requested a review of the impacts of current exemptions for clearance of vegetation. Nellenberg Council recently advocated the Victorian Planning Minister regarding the 1030 and 1050 rules, which are planning permit exemptions specified in clause 52.12-1, bushfire protection exemptions of the Victorian planning provisions. And although the allowance for exemptions under the planning framework reduces red tape and can provide landowners with an easier way to manage their land, there is unintended consequences of applying planning permit exemptions for tree removal for bushfire mitigation in an essentially urban area, further contributing to biodiversity loss and amenity loss, I would argue. But anyway, the concern relates to a trend in suburban property owners and developers taking advantage of the exemptions to maximise developable yield as opposed to mitigate genuine bushfire risk. This is also apparent in application of the exemptions to maximise views or other development outcomes that may be impeded by the location of some existing trees. There's a whole heap of different examples of how the planning scheme could be approved. Another one I've got is council contend that the state government should consider whether the value of the fines, and this is to do with tree removal compliance and fines. Government should consider whether the value of the fines are adequate for the purposes of deferring illegal works, and whether the state government should play a role rather than leaving the action of local authorities to prosecute. Nellenberg Shire Council urge a review the value of infringements and ensure they sufficiently deter illegal works. And we're finding that where council has successfully prosecuted, and one was a fine of $30,000, the individual hasn't paid. It's gone to Fines Victoria, and council's looking at losing a lot of that money and just trying to take them out of the court and get that money out of the offender. There's a bit on the new structure plans. So council recently adopted the 2020 new structure plans for each of the major activity centres at Eltham and Diamond Creek, which advanced state policy and objectives for the activity centre planning and optimise access by the community within walking distance to amenity, service and public transport. Notably, heights within these major activity centres are controlled throughout a schedule to the activity centre zone with some discretionary height controls, but a mandatory minimum height of 5 stories is in place. The ability to apply mandatory controls, particularly within areas with unique environment, environmental or character elements is crucial in ensuring the most effective outcomes in planning. A one-size-fit-all approach is not considered suitable. So the concern is that we're not going to have this maximum 5-storey height, and we won't actually be able to have those mandatory limits in this new planning scheme amendment that we're probably going to put to council again in February. Planning reform in the context of the big build is another one. I'd probably just sort of summarise that one by saying there's been various amendments. VC 187 and 190 have created a separate permit process for the development of housing projects, including apartments, by on behalf of the Director of Housing and planning permit exemption for projects funded under the Big Housing Build program. This comes as part of a series of other amendments that have been implemented into the planning schemes to facilitate state government building and infrastructure spending initiatives, including Amendment VC 194, which sets out a new and significantly streamlined approvals pathway for public projects by introducing 2 new provisions to all planning schemes. And that is Clause 5230, and that's state projects, and that allows the Minister for Planning to exempt defined infrastructure projects from planning scheme requirements, and Clause 52.31, local government projects, which allows councils to progress projects with a value of less than $10 million without a planning permit. So these are major changes, and our submission is in the papers, and a good submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Councillor Egan, would you like to speak? No. Any other councillors like to speak? Okay, all those in favour of the motion? It's carried unanimously. We'll now move to the second item of urgent business, and I call for a mover.
Yes, happy to move, Mayor, that Council, in accordance with Clause 57 of the Governance Rule Meeting Procedure, admit the item of urgent business relating to state government's planning reforms and advocacy.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. Do I have a seconder?
I am thrilled to second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. All right, all those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Let's move on to the motion, which is state government's planning reforms and advocacy. Do I have a mover for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
I move that Council 1 notes that the Victorian Government has made a number of changes to the planning system in the last 18 months and is currently considering further significant planning reform. 2, the Council calls on the Minister for Planning to include full consultation with local governments and community before any planning reform decisions are made, and urgently writes to the Minister of Planning and the Shadow Minister for Planning to advocate Council's position as per the attachment letter, attachment 5. And 3, request the CEO or delegate to continue to coordinate and undertake with other local governments advocacy.
Thank you, Councillor Egan and Councillor Perkins. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, and I suppose some of what was said in the previous motion speaks to this one as well. You know, state government's big build project where, it's great for, creating jobs and keeping jobs during COVID, but the usual planning controls and the ability of council and public to consult on major projects has almost been wiped off the face of the earth in the last couple of years. So, there is a fair push from local government, a bit of a pushback against the state government around some of their planning processes. It talks about, removal of red tape and really puts all the onus on that, if planning matters are delayed, that must be inefficient council's fault, where the reality is that more often than not, it's poor planning applications. This report speaks to that, and I think in paragraph 7, so, for example, the frequency of poor quality or incomplete applications, pre-application advice being regularly ignored, or the system being readily exploited to avoid notices and fees. So I know from my own there's a major planning permit that's been applied for in Diamond Creek on a residential block with 14 units or some ridiculous number of units. A lot of heat applied to council for the fact that an applicant has put in a pretty shoddy, potentially a pretty shoddy application that hasn't followed the state planning process, but that somehow becomes council's problem when applicants don't want to abide by the planning scheme, and that is somehow seen as council's fault. So that's just looking at the report. Again, I just sort of note 16 as well. Officers further note they're still awaiting outcomes and detailed implementation from DALP around submissions called to other proposed reforms throughout this year, including planning for Melbourne's Green Wedge and agricultural land consultation paper, the 10-year affordable housing strategy, Melbourne's land use framework plans, and NESD roadmaps. So what basically happens is that the state government goes out with a consultation paper, gives council only a few weeks to respond back to their discussion paper or their consultation paper. It doesn't give council any opportunity to speak to the community about it. Councillors are lucky to, by the time the report's done up, for council for it to even come to a council meeting, and for us to be properly briefed on it, let alone get some sense of the wider community reaction. So, you know, whether it's deliberate, whether it's you know, using COVID or the big build or other drivers, you know, state election coming up where some promises have to be completed. I'm not sure, but certainly the planning system at the moment is the cause of great concern, I think, not only for council but for community generally throughout Nellenberg, and that's what this motion is about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Councillor Egan, do you wish to speak? Any other councillors? No, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. We have no confidential reports, and we now come to the close of the meeting. We have our dates for our next planning and consultative committee meeting up, which is Tuesday the 8th of February, and our next council meeting is Tuesday the 22nd of February. So I wish all in our community a safe and fun-filled festive season. Take this time for rest and spending time with loved ones, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year. I now close the meeting at, I can't see that far with my glasses on, 9:36 p.m. Thank you all.